At E-Road, we believe fleet management doesn't have to be problematic. It should be effortless, connected, and future-ready for your heavy-duty operation. With a reliable, accurate technology solution, you can elevate your fleet's performance, improve productivity across your business, monitor events as they happen, and reduce costs and downtime. Get on the road to better fleet management and safer, more productive operations. Go beyond the basics and visit eroad.com today.
Services and packaging solutions at Cardinal Health. Welcome back to the show, Joel.
Thanks, Mary. It's good to see you again.
I am excited about today because I know last time we touched on some things in the pharmaceutical chain and kind of making sure that you always have, your supply ready. But today we're kind of getting into some of the waste and other aspects of it. So I'm just going to jump right in because we already know your backstory. What are some of those primary factors that we're seeing that are contributing to the casual billions of dollars that gets lost in the pharmaceutical supply chain every year?
Yeah, no, I mean, Mary, it's a great question. It's a question that's got a lot of answers to it. There's not one single thing that I would say is contributing to, the dollars lost in the supply chain today for pharmaceuticals. But a couple of things I'll call out that I think are contributing factors to that, right? One I would say is, the counterfeit challenges that we see from time to time, right? So whenever you are encountering an issue where a product is being counterfeited, that creates a lot of waste. It creates a lot of cost. It creates a lot of stress in the supply chain in dealing with those counterfeit type things. And so I think in the U.S. market, we've seen that in a couple of different areas where there's been some counterfeit to work through. So I think that's one aspect that you have to kind of think through, because when you think about a counterfeit product, now you've got to worry even extra about patient safety. So now, are you recalling product? Are you having product destroyed that's really good product that's not counterfeit? But it creates a lot of concern in the supply chain. So I'd say that's one area. The other area that I would say is one where, are we manufacturing and distributing product that sits on shelves for a period of time that then expires, then it has to come back through the supply chain and be destroyed. And so I think there's this kind of balance of trying to figure out the right types of levels of inventory to keep at any one location so that you reduce the amount of waste in the supply chain, reducing product going expired, having to be returned, replaced, things of that nature. So I think those things contribute to, part of the challenges of the cost in healthcare and in the pharmaceutical supply chain.
What do you mean by like there are legitimately counterfeit medicines that are going around? Like what? I don't understand how that's like a thing,
I mean, it's not all that different from a lot of just other products, not just pharmaceuticals, right? But if you've got a pharmaceutical product that is, a very strong, hot product on the market, there are nefarious players out there that want to figure out how to capitalize on that. And so they're going to figure out how do they try to replicate or how do they try to mimic that product and sell it as an original product when it's not an original product. And how do they cash in on that? And so, a lot of, companies have to worry about how they're managing, their products in the market to make sure they're not counterfeit. And I think that's where, like it or hate it, the whole kind of intent behind DSCSA, which is the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, is all focused on how do we make sure that legitimate products moving through the supply chain and getting to its end destination and ultimately to the patient, and that it's right product, it's good product. And so those are all efforts that the U.S. is taking to try to mitigate and minimize counterfeit product being in the market today. But you can read a lot of news reports about counterfeit activities taking place with various products in the market today, and that's a challenge that we see out there. And it's unfortunate that we have those kind of nefarious actors that are out there doing these things, but it's a reality we have to deal with.
I mean, obviously I'm not a criminal because I'd be very bad at it because I didn't even know that counterfeit medicine was a thing. But I mean, it makes sense if there's like counterfeit purses, why wouldn't there be counterfeit medicine? But also, like, I feel like if I'm like a criminal, like making a fake knockoff article of clothing or something like that, that's going to be faster, and I'm going to get my return on my investment quicker, and like I'm going to make my money faster. Whereas like making a counterfeit drug, like you still kind of have to do at the very base line like a little bit of science to figure out how to make it and not actually kill someone, and that just feels like far too much effort, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right, but I think we have to remember that these individuals, I don't think they're as worried about what the side effects are going to be to the person taking them, right? They're more focused on, does this look like the real thing? And can I make money on that? And how long can I make money on that? And so, they're not worried about the safety and efficacy. What they're worried about is, does it look like the real thing and I can pass it off as the real thing?
Fair point. Criminals not necessarily known for the best of intent.
Right.
All right. Well, minor segue aside, other than me learning about counterfeit medicine, what I've learned is that I'm really behind the times on thievery and, illegal activities, because I just can't seem to, even fathom where you begin with some of this stuff, which I guess is good. But anyway, it just always blows my mind whatever people come up with.
That
But
means you're running in the right circles, Mary. Not
exactly. And I think I'm going to keep that trend. I think I'll continue to be mind blown. But when it comes to so you kind of have some of the so that's one of the factors contributing to waste. And then obviously, you have you made too much sitting in a certain warehouse, et cetera, et cetera. Do you see kind of these do you kind of see an avenue someday in the future, hopefully soon, where you can kind of have a bunch of different pharmaceutical companies, or maybe motor carriers or 3PLs that focus on pharmaceuticals? Do you see there's like a chance for everyone to kind of work collaboratively and kind of sharing resources, saying like, oh, well, if company A has 200 units of penicillin or whatever at this warehouse and they run out in the next closest, and like their restock is 200 miles away, well, maybe they could like borrow some of company B until to feed it until they get there. I don't know if that's the best example, but do you kind of see a future where a collaborative approach to this is an option?
Yeah, no, I do, right? So, and I think the industry has been working on this for a little while now, but there's a model, or I say I could call it a model, but there's a concept that we talk a lot about, which is called just in time, right? So it's how do you get, the product from point A to point B just in time? Because ultimately you want to make sure there's product there on the shelf when a script is being filled and needs to be dispensed, or a patient's going through a procedure or whatnot. You want to make sure you've got product there and you're not waiting for product to get there. And so I think we continue to look at the model in the supply chain of, how do I most efficiently move product from point A to point B, but do it in a way where it can be just in time. So if you've got a procedure tomorrow, how do I get the product to there tomorrow just in time for that procedure? And so, there's a lot of work that we've done, and the industry as a whole has done, on focusing on minimizing what we call as days inventory on hand, DIOH, right? So it's how do you reduce your DIOH so that you don't have waste, in the supply chain as much as possible, but not impacting patients who need product when they need it. So that's kind of the challenge that we've all been working through and continue to work through, and that comes down to either finding, and creating more efficient transportation models that looks at how you're looking at data that's flowing between entities, so you can understand like how much inventory do they have, how much do they need, what do forecasts look like. So there's a lot of ways to kind of go after that, but that's an area I think we can continue to work on.
I 100% think that that is a fantastic approach, because I would love to see it where, you can, I don't want to say like combine inventory, because that sounds like it could be a nightmare, but where you have the ability to just kind of say like, okay, here's like a pool of resources and everybody can kind of take what, like more or less take what they need. And I think that that's really going to help I think that that could really help, because also, like you said, if everyone kind of gets their scheduling improved and on point, you can really improve that just in time delivery. Where, if I know I have these 5 surgeries today, that morning before we even have our first patient walk through the door, all my medicines I need for that day, plus anything extra that I might need, would show up, and we're ready to go. And that would just kind of keep you going. And I think that if we can get everything kind of scheduled out better, and a little bit more visibility throughout everything, I think that's the natural solution, is that you have all of these options, and you can be much more efficient and make sure that you have more product in each place. So, like, if you have a lot of heart transplants in one part of the country, you can send your heart medicine there. And then if you have knee surgeries in one part, you can have all of the wrist supplies there. And I will be the first one to say that I do not know what supplies you need for a heart transplant versus a knee surgery. I assume there's a lot of overlap, but I don't actually really know.
Yeah, it's a lot more complex than most of us understand and realize, right? But it's the supply chain has got a lot of complexity in there, and I think over the years, and now we continue to look at how do we simplify, how do we make it a little bit easier than what it is today. So one, you can reduce costs, but you can also improve just the overall kind of dependency and reliability of product getting where it needs to on time. And so they've made a lot of great strides and progress, and the industry's done a really good job in working through that. And Cardinal Health and others have really worked on moving to models where it's same day delivery to institutions versus, hey, I got to send you 100 units because you're going to need it for the next couple of weeks. And based on, the shelf life of products and what's going on, that could be good or that could be bad. So there's a lot of great steps that the industry's taken to improve that model. And we continue to challenge ourselves to say, like, how do we take the data that we have and understand that the trends and the information that's coming from that data that can then shape how we create the right models that improve the overall efficiency of what we're doing in the supply chain.
100%. And I think we've even talked previously on the show about some people will, or some companies will have all the ingredients they need to make a drug somewhere, and they'll keep all of them separate for like shelf stability. And then, because it's like that clock starts once they're combined. And so then they'll kind of combine it as they need it. So all the resources are there, and then they'll just kind of combine it as they need it and send it out that way, as another way to kind of preserve some of that, or reduce the amount of waste, which is really cool. But again, I'm not sure if you can just like mix them together and shake them up, or what that would look like.
I don't know that it would work that way. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but because there is a lot of science and there's a lot of aspects that go into the manufacturing side. I'm not a manufacturer, but as I've seen the processes over the years, I mean, it's pretty amazing what the manufacturers go through and do to ensure that the product being created is the right product, the right dosage, the right amount of the active pharmaceutical ingredient that goes into that to do what it needs to do. And so it's not just, hey, you can put up a shop and start mixing things and call it good, but no, there's ways to continue to figure out how we get better at I'll call kind of the drug delivery system in the supply chain of moving product from point A to point B.
And to kind of bring it back to that drug delivery system, if you like throughout the basically, if you had a lot of really helpful partners, like either even down from like your hospital scheduling to your distribution warehouse to your 3PL to your manufacturer, if everyone was kind of like all on the same wavelength, do you see kind of the future of like partnerships and collaborations there really being the future of the pharmaceutical supply chain, or do you still kind of seeing it being a little more siloed off?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think in a lot of cases those silos are starting to collapse, right? And they're starting to kind of go away, which is good. And that's coming from those collaborations and partnerships and discussions where it's sharing data, it's sharing insights of knowing what's happening at each stage of the supply chain. And so once that information is known, then you can begin crafting solutions to improve those processes. And so I think the industry's done a good job over the last several years of trying to make sure the data is being shared in a way that it helps for manufacturers knowing where all the supply is across the network, how many days on hand are being carried at certain locations to make sure that they're not overstocking in some areas and understocking in other areas. And so that data sharing and collaboration really makes a big difference.
I think 100% because like you said I feel like even on the the food supply chain or even the dry van side, knowing what's coming down the pipeline and knowing how to properly plan is half the battle because something we've talked about previously is if only everybody kind of understood the point of demand planning and had the warehouse talking to the marketing team so that way when marketing says, hey, we're running a sale, the warehouse is like, I'm sorry, what? Why? You're doubling our orders. Like, how do we handle this? And I think that that's something that everybody kind of forgets just because it seems so easy and like, oh, I don't need to think about this. Like, it'll just be fine. But making sure that even within one partner, that like both hands are talking to each other and everyone can kind of see what's happening and everyone on down the line knows when a promotion is coming or something like that because I think that that's really key is making sure that everyone has all that visibility and no one's like surprise we're doubling our volume tomorrow. I think that that's really going to kind of be important especially as people revert back to that just in time model because I know during the pandemic everyone kind of went more to holding some inventory on hand because just in time was not getting there in time.
Well, and that's why Cardinal Health is a very big proponent of what we refer to as operational excellence, right? So, you know, across the organization, we do a lot of what we call OpEx projects, right? Which is very much focused on taking the pain points out of the process, simplifying, right? And making it easier, reducing the cost to serve. And so we do projects every year that are very much focused on what you talked about, which is, hey, we got to improve communication from point A to point B. We got to improve the data flow. We got to change these processes to ensure a better outcome at the end of the day. And so that's something that I'm very proud of our organization that we do multiple times throughout the year is these operational excellence projects that are really aimed at improving these processes, improving the flow of product from point A to point B. And so we continue to tweak and fine tune those processes to make it easier for everybody.
I absolutely love that because that is something that I have shouted about at length is you develop a process and it works and you're like this is great, but you have to revisit it to make sure that it's still working and that it's still as effective. I'm not saying you need to revisit it every month, but with regularity, you need to go back, double check, and make sure that, okay, this a process that was supposed to save us so much time, nothing else broke because you have something worked out perfectly. You come over here, you work something else at, and then something over here breaks something over here and it's a nightmare and then but nobody ever necessarily catches it unless you go back and review those processes. So I think that that's something that I love that you guys do because it really keeps you on top of everything and it keeps it so you're pretty flexible and can adapt to whatever you need to adapt to.
Yeah.
So when it comes to, keeping up with your operational excellence and managing all of these relationships with partners and visibility and aspects, have you guys found that there's any kind of preferred technology or kind of preferred system that you found that really seems to work? I mean, obviously you don't have to give away the secret sauce, but is there one type of avenue that you found that has been like the most successful?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's one avenue, one preferred technology, just because there's so many different aspects that we're evaluating and looking at. But and technology is changing all the time, right? And so, we spend a lot of time in doing different roadmaps and evaluating our technology to say, are we getting the right outcomes we want? Do we have the technology that provides the right solutions to get us where we want to go? So I wouldn't say there's one technology that is utilized, but whether it's your ERP system that you're looking at, or whether it's a data platform or reporting platform that does analytics. I mean, there's various tools that you're going to want to use because they're all inputs to providing answers to a better solution. So, I think having a good data analytics tool and software is important, as a technology, because there's so much data, there's so much information that's out there floating around that if you can then harness it in a digestible way, a readable way, that'll drive some of the decision making on changes to processes and solutions that you want to do. So I think understanding the data is a critical component to any type of, I think, technology solution that you're looking at.
I think that that is 1,000% because I think almost more than one specific technology solution, it really comes down to that integration and making sure that everything is integrated fully to the way that, you know, your data can flow seamlessly, because the last thing you want is to have all of these great partnerships and then have something get stuck. And then it's like a really bad game of telephone where you kind of have to sit there and piece together what it should be. And that's not efficient or helpful for anyone.
Well, and I think with any technology that you're using, right, you've got to understand the resiliency and the redundancy of those systems. I think we all learned, across the U.S., not just in pharma, but with the whole CrowdStrike thing that occurred, right? It really tests kind of the resiliency of the systems that we're utilizing. So I think whatever system you use or have, you got to make sure there's a strong business continuity kind of plan behind that, and there's strong resiliency behind that system as well.
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about on another show, and that is, you know, making sure that you do test those fail safes. If you have something where, okay, if something goes wrong, this is plan B, at least at the very base minimum, keep business running, make it so that way we're not basically flying blind. And so I think that obviously in the case of like the big CrowdStrike situation, there's not a lot of people could have done. It just was a real bad day for a lot of people. But there still should be those fail safes, and you need to stress test yourself. You know, you need to say, okay, if we're gonna switch all this over, if we're running, you know, with one arm tied behind our back, we need to practice that. We need to practice, you know, saying, okay, well, now our TMS is down, so we need to be able to email out BOLs to people, and we'll get caught up and we'll kind of have to do things manually. So having a process in place for that, hoping that you never have to use it, I think that that's still very important and valid. So that way you can still keep your trucks running, and you don't just come to a screeching halt saying, well, I guess we just have to wait for everything to get fixed.
Right.
So that being said, Joel, we are coming to the end of our time together today, but don't worry, because we have one more question. We already know where you stand on cereal and soup. So this time you got to hit us with your best cheesy dad joke.
All right. So I don't know if it's the best or the most cheesiest dad joke, but the one, Mary, I'll give you today is that if you ever get an email from me about canned meat, don't open it because it's spam.
Okay, I actually really like that one.
So that's the best I've got for today.
I love that one. I love this part of it because everyone has such different and strong cheesy joke games, and I love it. So Joel, if someone wants to reach out with a canned meat email, or if they want to reach out about anything that we've talked about today for the pharmaceutical supply chain, where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me. You can find me out there by just doing a search under my name, Joel Ament, and so LinkedIn great option as well. But obviously, you can do a search for Cardinal Health 3PL, and that will take you to our website as well. And obviously, anybody can just email me directly, right? It's just simply joel.wayman@cardinalhealth.com. So it's pretty straightforward.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet. Thanks so much, Mary. I appreciate your time.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice here on FreightWaves TV, YouTube, or anywhere else you get your podcasts like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. See you on the internet.